Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or rather, good day to all of you. This is Kris Farrugia presenting you the podcast Crypto Today and Tomorrow. This is going to be episode 3. This is going to be rather interesting, actually, since we're going to be introducing a new person or a new face, working with Instacoins, but this time in the US entity. So, yes, we've got somebody from the United States, and we'd like to welcome, in fact, Shaine Rucker, who's basically the new sales executive, which will be helping out in the US. This will be very interesting because, of course, as you've been aware from the previous episodes, we discussed different topics, starting with the introduction of crypto. We also went through some payments and compliance, and this time we're going to take the sales approach. But of course, sales has different approaches, different applications, but also, how can traditional industries, start to adopt crypto in their sales flow. So this is, quite a few topics which we will be tackling today. But first and foremost, let's get a nice introduction from Shaine. So Shaine, thank you for joining us, and of course, welcome to the team and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kris, for having me. Beautiful intro there. I appreciate it. And glad to be a part of the team. So, a little bit about myself. I originally started my career off in healthcare, surprisingly so.
All right.
and from there, I went to various different industries. I started with financial services. I worked in telecommunications, banking, and I found myself eventually working with different SaaS solutions being offered. I've always been a quick learner, always looking to, I guess, try to sharpen my mind and try to adapt with the times. Not really a big fan of being stagnant, so I think either you have to adapt with what's transpiring in the world, or you kind of get left behind. So I ended up finding myself trading is how I ended up into the industry. So like many others, I was trading. I'm thinking, wait, I can spend $100 and make $1 million. So it started off in
Many
general.
people's wishes, yeah.
It's too good to be true, right? I then found myself working for a company where we offer different anti-money laundering solutions, more so primarily based upon blockchain analytics. So we're using on-chain and off-chain data to verify transactions for different entities and so forth. The one component that can hold an industry back is if it's, the regulatory aspects aren't met. So I really wanted to understand that as the industry has been growing. From there, I've just constantly developed my knowledge. Definitely excited being on the team. Any company that is looking forward and trying to bridge that gap between the typical processes and technologies and advance it. Definitely, that forward thinking mindset is something that I've always aspired to be a part of. I on my side, I like doing things creatively. So when I'm not in a suit, I like to paint. I like to draw things creatively, music. Um, I kind of nerd out every now and then. I like AI, so I do a lot of research with artificial intelligence. That's something that I'm very interested in. I believe that the crypto space, blockchain, it intersects with artificial intelligence on many different levels, and over time, I think society will begin to see that. But overall, I'm glad to be here.
Great. Thank you for that. It is also, cool to have another person that also appreciates music. I mean, you may be aware or may not be yet, of course, because I mean you're still new with the team. But both myself and quite a few others within the team, especially in the marketing team, I would say, we've been in bands. We've been in bands together. So we're all, into music, creating music, writing music. So yeah, it's good to have another person to have musical taste. So that's good. We can discuss things further. Behind the lens, we can discuss other things related to music. So that's cool. Mentioning nerding out, of course. I mean, if you see my background, I guess we all have that little bit of some passions here and there which go outside of work. Of course, it is extremely important to have. So yeah, it's cool, creative. I think being a creative person, it also helps with adapting very quickly because we have different ways of how to see things and interpret things, which I found even myself while growing up and while building through my career that it helped me a lot to walk through different stages. So that those are some interesting features to have. Let's put it in that way. But I must, one of the first questions which I would like to ask you, especially based on your interest, starting from healthcare and then going all through to where you are now. I mean, what triggered your interest in sales? Because I mean, you've got quite a good knowledge in sales, so of course, your experience and your growth through your career. You must have found, lots of things which helped you to adapt and adopt these strategies. But was there anything in particular which inspired you or influenced you in order to take up this role?
Yeah, I would say tracking the numbers is what initially started the interest in sales career wise. Now, when I was younger, not a lot of people know this, but when I was younger, I did door to door sales at one point. So when I was 14, I used to knock on doors, take 4 or 5 steps back. That way, when they answer the door, you're not too close. So just kind of being mindful of those things. So I anyone that's done door to door sales, you get a real understanding of rejection, right? You get
Yeah,
off of my property, I'm not interested. So at a very young age, I kind of understood that it doesn't matter how many no's you get, it only takes that one yes. So it may be a bit callous in the sense of I don't have a fear of rejection. Now it just how can I adjust my approach in order to get this sale or to show the value that can be brought. When it comes to as I got older, career wise, healthcare still comes down to numbers. I used to have a role doing pharmaceutical management, primarily dealing with the handling and inventory count of narcotics, and it goes back to pharmaceutical, right? So from there, you follow the numbers and you begin to see it adds up in sales, right? So kind of that personal connection from career kind of led to more of a business, kind of stimulant for myself where I began researching companies. I began looking at their annual reports and started seeing, okay, what is cost of operation? And so I really wanted to understand how do businesses function behind the scenes more. So sales is always at the core of a business because you have to generate revenue. If you don't have revenue, you don't have the allocation for cost of operations. You don't have assets. If you just have liabilities, right?
yes,
So
yes, and
that was
headaches.
my general introduction into sales, and what really got me interested was really just following the numbers and understanding that capitalist society or not, it doesn't matter internationally, there always needs to be trade. Even a bartering system, if you want to go back thousands of years, it's still some form of trade. The only difference now is you have brokers in the middle, but overall, it's still the same.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But it's interesting because it raises another question, which again, since your interest was trying to understand how businesses function and whatnot, and since of course this podcast is related to crypto and the potential, let's say, adoption of crypto in different ways. So did you ever consider in the past perhaps how can these businesses start to adopt or start accepting crypto as a method of payment, for example, because of course there are different ways how a person can purchase for some items, and over the past few years there has been this big increase with people wanting to use their crypto in order to buy items. So of course there's a big sales opportunity over there. Now, from a salesperson who wants to introduce this idea to other salespersons to make their life easier or to widen their horizon as regards to which clients to attract. You know, how would you go about it?
So I would start with understanding what is currently being done in the current payment methods, how the current infrastructure is. I believe that there has to be a balance between technology advancing, but also understanding the legacy systems that are already in place. So we're not going to teleport to the future, right? As far as technology and things that are offered. So there needs to be a bridge. And in order to have that bridge, you have to have an understanding of both perspectives in both markets. People that are very advanced technology wise, we just want it instantaneous. And that's where kind of the hardcore quote enthusiasts come into play, where everything should only be Bitcoin, get rid of all the currencies of the world, things of that nature. However, it's not practical because of the society that we currently live in. So there has to be a bridge where the transition is done. Um, when it comes to sales, I think it'll be a bit easier for sales people to understand, kind of overall, because they have tools at their disposal already to generate revenue, and this is just another tool to accept payment. So it's almost, we can accept
Technically
this form.
speaking, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a
Exactly.
new form, and when it comes to the digital aspect, it's very big on the psychology, I believe, of most businesses and people. We have direct deposit already. We have wire transfers. Our money already is a keystroke away. The only difference is the mindset of fiat in comparison to a cryptocurrency. But it's already digital. The only difference is how is your brain responding really to the process. So I think that the process for sales, it will actually be very beneficial because things settle quicker, right? So you have someone that's doing sales and they want to sell a car for, $80,000. They have to wait for a lot of things to process through, right? It has to go through certain clearings, or if there's a wire transfer limitation on the financial institution. And so you purchased the car on a Tuesday, but you don't actually get to drive off with it until a Friday, depending on what the cost is. So, same thing with purchasing a home, where transactions are so quick and efficient. Using cryptocurrency as the payment method, and also the security aspect, it only adds to the benefit for sales because you'll actually be able to close more business by accepting more payments.
I mean, we have seen this even, from other aspects of businesses and even online. I mean, there is this huge demand, and at the end of the day, I think one of the in fact, I believe we discussed it even with Jonathan in episodes 2. In fact, when we were discussing payments in general, is that there's the speed factor, which is important, because at the end of the day, I mean, we have always been taught in business, even from a traditional aspect, that time is money, and it's whether it is the way how we are using up our time, which is costing money, or whether it is the efficiency of the way how we're doing things, which is also going to cost money. So of course this potential ability to accept payments in crypto, which is so fast and so secure, which can help you start making use of the services you purchase, immediately, rather than having to wait for 3, 4, 5 days due to other institutions or other issues which may arise. That of course makes a massive difference. So yes, absolutely. I mean, I see, we see the potential in this. We do understand, of course, when we consider that maybe some companies would be scared of, let's say, the risk volatility, with pricing. Um, uh, but many times, there are these solutions do not affect a business's risk. Why? Because if it is a service that is being provided, and the client is going to be paying in crypto at the end of the day, the service being provided is allowing, you mentioned the sale of a car before. It is allowing the car dealer to still get the money in fiat, because ultimately that is the goal over here, to find ways how we can make this work. In your words, or the way how you see it, how can we maybe not facilitate the process, because I believe the process is already quite simple as is, but how can people start feeling more comfortable understanding that there is actually not much of a risk and that things are so secure as they are, especially from a business perspective if we aim to sell a product to a business to start accepting crypto.
Great question. And that would be the primary reason how I ended up into blockchain analytics. So it comes down to being able to track, you know, digitally the funds. And when it comes to crypto, despite the maybe the stigma or the narrative that was, created by people doing, scams like pig butchering and all these different things where they're able to, especially nefarious actors, using all these illicit funds, it kind of created a bad name for the word crypto in general, even though underlying there are large institutions that they already began pilot tests years ago. They currently have their own digital versions of their tokens and coins and their own personal private blockchains. So when it comes to the risk aspect, I definitely think it comes down to the education and understanding that the current system actually has more risk than the system that is being implemented already by larger institutions at this time. So again, like the education aspect, I think just slowing down and being able to articulate the new technology advancements with the current processes. And that's going to be the biggest thing. It comes down to learning curve. Because at the end of the day, businesses want to know, is it going to help me make more money? Am I going to be protected? You're dealing with financial institutions. Am I going to be, quote, compliant in certain aspects? So once they have those questions answered and they have that understanding, it's going to allow them to be a little more open to it. I just think it's a lack of knowledge at this time. And that's where sales comes in. And it's our job. It'd be my job in particular, in the US to articulate our solution that's being offered is going to benefit your business. And any questions that you have, we have the answers ready to go because we're looking at it from their perspective. It's a value exchange. It's we're only going to be able to can do business if you benefit. So as far as the one-sided aspect of it, if you win, then we win. And that's essentially how it comes down from a business perspective.
Yes, agreed. Another question based on perhaps even what you mentioned at the beginning when you said that you particularly enjoyed studying numbers and seeing how numbers affect what creates what. Um, so based on not necessarily statistics, but of course on your own knowledge and your belief, but based on what you have studied and explored through your career and knowledge, are there any in industries which seem to be more inclined with accepting crypto as a form of payment? And also, do you see, on the contrary, any industries which tend to be a little bit more traditional or not so inclined?
So the first industry that would come to mind would be gaming. The reason gaming would be at the top of my list as far as acceptance is most gaming industries, they're targeting the younger generation. So they're willing to try a little more because they haven't, I guess, got stuck in their ways, right? They don't have certain habits. They're not accustomed to conducting business or transactions and by a certain method. So they're a little more open. And when it comes to the gaming as well, they already have used digital currency within their games. They've already taken their fiat and purchased, virtual coins on their game so they can buy a new helmet or buy a new pair of shoes or whatever the case may be. So they're already accustomed to doing those type of transactions. So I think the learning curve for them is definitely not big because they do it all day every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one aspect. I would say the least, I guess, accepting currently, it definitely be anything based upon legacy systems. So real estate could be one. The older way of thinking. They're used to conducting business a certain way. Now, the companies that are advancing within real estate and they are being open as far as their marketing tactics, the type of payments that they're saying, the type of real estate they're looking for and developing, those are going to be the ones to definitely be mindful of. But that would be one. I would also say maybe certain investors that there may be a little on edge as far as not understanding the market in comparison to what their portfolios would previously look like. So someone, if someone has based their entire portfolio off of the Warren Buffett strategy, which is a great strategy, right? So it's an amazing strategy. But if they only want to have Coca Cola in their portfolio and they don't want to add Meta, well, they're kind of going to miss out because they're stuck in an older way of thinking, as an example. So the same thing with technology. So people that are going to be a little more conservative are going to be the long term industries that have a lot of maturity because they're looking to see what is going to be the future track record of the industry. I guess the downside for them in that point is they're missing out on kind of the grassroots aspects of it where it's already advancing, but because there's so many questions that they believe they need answered, um, it's kind of going to allow some of them to miss out on certain opportunities. But that's again where Instacoin comes into play to be able to educate the market, to be able to answer those questions, and then be able to showcase how the solutions can help benefit their business.
Okay. Something, there's a quick, let's say, snippet from my past. I remember, so back in Malta, because I am Maltese, I am from Malta. I remember back about 8 or 9 years ago, this car dealer, opened up, and he had, at the front of his dealer place, a massive sign stating, that we accept Bitcoin. And that was the first time that I had ever, heard of Bitcoin before. I mean, for those, who never um, uh, maybe heard the story before, I was in a tourism section before. So I came from a very traditional industry, which is, tourism, catering for group travel. So a very traditional aspect. And I remember that when I had seen, this sign that this car dealership wanted to accept, was ready to accept Bitcoin to sell a car. I remember asking myself, but how, how is this? How is somebody ready to do that? But when we consider, if we move forward, 8, 9 years, and we are in 2024 nowadays, and we know that there are these options available where, but whether they are cars, which can be purchased using crypto, whether there are travel services which can be using crypto, chartering of jets, because of course, I mean, there are those who can afford to do that. So I mean, there's quite an interesting way of how, people adopted to first seeing an idea which didn't even know was possible, and now it's becoming part of us. And even if we look at the studies and the way how the percentage of people within the world, if we look at the percentage of people using it now and what is expected within 5, 10 years, the increase is quite drastic. So it goes to show that these opportunities are there, and that businesses, I believe, would lose out a lot if they do not, let's be a bit cheesy here, and if they do not get on the wave and ride the wave of progression, so to say, then there are going to be companies that are going to miss out on these opportunities, because there are people that have crypto, they want to buy stuff using crypto, and if you don't have the method of payment, then you're losing on it.
Absolutely, and I would agree that most of the infrastructure that society operates on, most people they're unaware of the framework that it's designed on. You're doing your everyday transactions where your everyday business is being conducted, and you're not really paying attention to the small things. As an example, when you're driving, you're not thinking, why did it take 27 seconds for the light to turn from green to red? Or But somebody had to program that light in order for that to happen. Somebody had to track the traffic flow of that intersection and then determine this left turn or this right turn on average takes X amount of seconds. And so all of those kind of really detailed oriented little data points that everyday life you don't kind of pay attention to. Very similar, let's say, Swift, right? So you have the Swift messaging board that financial institutions use to communicate with each other. Well, when you go put a deposit into the bank, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking that, oh, it's going from Swift to an ISO to you're not thinking of kind of the back end. So I think even with crypto, even with the advancement, there's going to be people, they're going to be utilizing it every day and they're not even aware of it. And from a business perspective, it's, are you going to adapt with the times or are you going to kind of stay stagnant in that sense?
I think that funnily enough, people are going to end up probably being more educated in crypto than actually being educated with how to use physical money or what happens with banks and whatnot. That is,
Absolutely.
but again, if that helps with creating trust and with creating this crystal clear aspect of how this works, then all well and good. I mean, I strongly believe in this. One other thing which I'd like to ask, this is quite, let's say, straightforward, but at the same time I think can be rather broad. So what are the benefits of adapting, sorry, to the digital transformation using crypto payments?
So the primarily the benefit I would say is from the business perspective is you actually have more control as far as verifying where funds are coming from. So any businesses that they really need to be mindful of tracking, because it is digital, it is on the blockchain, it is an immutable ledger, you actually have the ability with certain companies to track where those funds come from. So from a compliancy standpoint, it helps your team there. From the other side, from an actual consumer, it allows you to control your wallet, your account, to make that transaction almost on a peer to peer sense. Now it's business, so you're always going to have multiple uh, people and multiple stakeholders that are involved when a transaction occurs. There's no way around that because you have to have the companies in place in order for the transaction to be facilitated. What does change, however, is the amount of hands. I guess I can just say that. So in that and being mindful of the amount of hands that are touching the transaction, that security aspect is taken care of by utilizing a blockchain technology. So instead of it being so human error prone, now it's going through a system where you can't change what happened because now everybody's going to know. So security is another big reason as well. There's various different ones. Transaction speed is a big one. If you are doing any international travel, well, you have to do a foreign exchange, right? Well, if you have your Bitcoin in America, you can also use your Bitcoin in Africa. You can use it in Sweden. You can use it in Indonesia. So it kind of opens up the international trade as well. So now companies that are primarily based, let's say, in Eastern Europe, or they're based in Southeast Asia, now they can actually conduct business internationally because they can accept those forms of payment without having to worry about doing certain exchanges, what's the exchange rate, and all of those different variables that play a factor. So it expands your market. So if you have a very productive business wherever you are locally, by expanding the payment method that you're willing to accept, you ultimately expand your target market, which is eventually going to increase your revenue, increase your business, because it makes the market more competitive. So now it favors the consumer, but it also favors the business. The consumers have more options because they can do transactions without having to worry about certain exchanges, and businesses if their local competitor has just been killing them for years, well, now they're not worried about that because they say, you know what, you may take this market share locally, but now we accept Bitcoin, so now we have an international market, for instance, especially with e-commerce and things of that nature. So there's so many different benefits and so many different ways that you can utilize the different cryptos, Bitcoin in particular. So I definitely think, depending upon the business and what their model is, once the conversation starts, everything can be tailored to benefit them the best.
Okay, that's very very interesting. All right. I believe from my end, we already exhausted the questions. I mean, we've been quite fast with that, which is good and not good, but good. I mean, because it's nice to have things really straightforward. What I would like to add, let's say it is part of an outro, but at the same time. It is good to comment that, of course, as mentioned at the beginning, Shane is our, or rather, Instacoins is a new sales executive in the US. Should anybody be interested in getting in touch with Shane, I mean, of course, we do understand that US people would like to speak to a US person, perhaps. So, of course, if you'd like Shane's contact, we would be more than happy to provide this. Should Shane be able to help you out with any business requirements or whatnot, of course, there's quite a few of us, whether we are in Europe or in the US, which can help out. So. I think that does it for today. Shane, thank you very much for being part of the podcast. I know that it was a bit of a baptism of fire. You recently started and you're already on a podcast, but we believe in doing things this way. We strongly believe in putting a name to a face. That is something which you've heard us mentioning a lot in the calls we've done, internally, so to say. So this is part of the exercise what we're doing here with this podcast. It is important for us to show ourselves, to show people, what Instacoins is about, but also, from an educational perspective, how can we help people understand different uses, the whys, the hows, and how can crypto be adopted in everyday life or in everyday business requirements. So that is why we took this approach so far, with the first episode being more related towards crypto itself, the blockchain and whatnot, and a bit of compliance. The second one being towards payments, and the third one, of course, being sales and more of a business perspective and how it can be used. So, of course, I mean, it is also good to point out that for those that have crypto and they, let's say, they want to buy a car, but their car dealer does not accept crypto, you can always pass them on to us and we can help you out. So that is something which of course we can do, be it through Shane, if you're in the US, be it through the rest of the team. If you're in Europe, there are different ways how to get this done. We don't only help out people within these two continents. Of course, we are open to everywhere else. So that gives you the possibility to think from a broader perspective as well. So yeah, Shane, once again, thank you for that. Thank you to everybody who's been looking out for us. Of course, we will hopefully present episode 4 also soon, hopefully with new surprises and new guests. So thank you to you, and thanks, Shane.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure.